As soon as the cocoon of white light took shape, the arrow of gray light also arrived, and the latter struck the former with tremendous force. The white cocoon was instantly shattered like an eggshell to reveal Gongshuju inside, and the gray arrow had already pierced through his body. A large hole had been punched through his chest, and blood instantly began to flow out of all of his orifices. Just as Mo Yu declared, it had only taken him a single attack to strike down Gongshuju. Han Li was very much taken aback to see this, but also quite relieved. However, in the next instant, Gongshuju's body abruptly dissipated into a cloud of white mist, following which he reappeared behind Mo Yu, then immediately opened his mouth to release a burst of dazzling five-colored light, within which was a semi-transparent crystalline rock. The rock was surrounded by arcs of dazzling five-colored light, and it was giving off an incredibly destructive aura. Mo Yu's expression changed drastically upon seeing this, and he hurriedly fled to the side while a burst of gray flames appeared around him to form a fiery gray barrier. However, it was already too late, and the five-colored rock caught up to him in the blink of an eye, then exploded into a ball of blinding five-colored lightning that inundated his entire body in an instant. The destructive power erupting out of the burst of five-colored lightning was over 10 times more formidable than that of the pill tribulations from before, and the space around the five-colored lightning immediately became severely warped and fractured. Looking as if it could shatter at any moment, arcs of five-colored lightning sprang forth in all directions, causing the surrounding space to tremble violently, and everyone hurriedly took evasive measures, flying back in retreat as quickly as they could. Within the blinding five-colored light, Mo Yu had vanished without a trace, and it seemed that his body had been completely eradicated. A faint smile appeared on Gongshuju's face upon seeing this, while Han Li and the others looked on with grim expressions. If Mo Yu really had been slain, then they would once again be in a dire situation. The five-colored lightning flashed a few times before quickly fading away. All of a sudden, Gongshuju's expression stiffened as a ball of gray light emerged, where the five-colored lightning had been just a moment ago. The ball of light was around the same height as a grown man, and there were wisps of dense gray chi swirling around it. The gray light then parted to reveal Mo Yu once again, and his complexion was a little pale, but aside from that, he was completely unscathed, and even his clothes were completely undamaged. "You're a gray immortal. How could you possibly have survived heavenly damnation lightning? This is impossible," Gongshuju exclaimed in incredulity. "I didn't think that you would have a heavenly damnation lightning stone, but unfortunately for you, it's one of the lowest caliber, and that won't be enough to kill me," Mo Yu said with a shake of his head. Gongshuju immediately turned and fled toward the entrance of the palace as a streak of white light. "Hey, don't run! I have to keep my promises!" Mo Yu yelled as he swept his right hand through the air, and his left arm instantly exploded into a ball of dense gray light, which transformed into a gray chain that shot forth through the air in a flash. In the next instant, the gray chain appeared around Gongshuju, then wrapped itself around him in a flash. Bright gray light erupted out of Mo Yu's body before spreading outward, instantly forming a gray spirit domain with countless gray shadows swirling within it. He then began to chant an incantation, and all of the gray shadows within the spirit domain converged toward a single spot to form an enormous gray dragon's head. The draconic head was riddled with black runes, and it was giving off a terrifying glacial aura that was only becoming more and more formidable by the second. In the instant the draconic head took shape, Han Li and the others were all instantly struck by a burst of sharp pain all over the entirety of their bodies, and they felt as if even their bone marrow were being frozen solid. The protective spiritual light around them was completely ineffective in warding off this glacial aura, and they hurriedly flew away even further to protect themselves. Gongshuju's expression finally darkened slightly upon seeing this, and he let loose a low roar as balls of dazzling white flames abruptly erupted out of his body. Every single one of these white fireballs were giving off tremendous law power fluctuations, and they were scorching the gray chain intently, while he was also struggling to free himself with all his might. The gray chain immediately began to creak and groan, and it looked as if it would burst apart at any moment. But at this point, the gray draconic head had already completely taken shape, and it took up virtually the entire palace. Its skin was riddled with gray scales that were giving off a cold gleam, and 2 balls of gray fire lit up within its huge eye sockets as it cast its gaze toward Gongshuju. A thunderous roar rang out as it opened its cavernous mouth to release a pillar of black light that struck Gongshuju with tremendous force, resulting in an incredibly bright eruption of gray light that forced everyone to shield their eyes and look away. After the gray light faded, Hanli discovered that Gongshuju had been sent flying into one of the collapsed walls of the palace. His body was virtually completely embedded into the wall, and his robes had been torn to shreds. His hair was completely disheveled, and it was clear that he had suffered extremely severe injuries. That's all you've got? How frail. I don't even feel like playing around with you anymore. Mo Yu sighed as he made a hand seal, and another burst of blinding gray light emerged within the mouth of the gray draconic head. An alarmed look appeared on Gongshuju's face as he hurriedly flew out of the wall as a streak of white light, and he didn't even have time to address his own injuries, as swept a sleeve through the air, releasing a small white flag and a yellow badge, which began to rapidly revolve around him to form a protective barrier. Right at this moment, a pained look suddenly appeared on Mo Yu's face, and he began to tremble uncontrollably, while his gray spirit domain also began to ripple violently. A dull thump rang out as the gray draconic head exploded into a vast expanse of gray light, following which the entire spirit domain also vanished in a flash. Gongshuju was quite taken aback by this turn of events, but an ecstatic look then appeared on his face as he fled into the distance. Right at this moment, a streak of golden light flashed past, and a figure appeared in Gongshuju's path in the blink of an eye. It was none other than Hanli, and radiant golden light erupted out of his body as he summoned his mantra. Treasured Axis, which immediately began to revolve rapidly. Countless golden ripples surged out of the axis before encompassing Gongshuju's entire body, instantly stopping him cold in his tracks. Hanli then raised a hand to send an azure flying sword hurtling out of his sleeve, and it instantly swelled to over 100 feet in length, while thick arcs of golden lightning that were imbued with an incredibly destructive aura erupted over its surface. A cold gleam flashed through his eyes as he made a hand seal, and the giant azure sword abruptly appeared in front of Gongshuju in a flash before crashing down with immense power. Gongshuju was already aware of the fact that he was a member of the Reincarnation Palace, so if he were to get away, then there would be no end to Hanli's troubles. He had already determined that even high zenith stage Jade Immortals weren't impervious to his time law powers. Prior to this, he had no chance of getting close to Gongshuju, but the perfect opportunity had just presented itself. During the earlier battle, Xueying had made sure to keep her distance, but she immediately swooped onto the scene upon seeing this. Things had progressed completely differently from what she had anticipated, but she was naturally not going to allow a mere mid-golden immortal cultivator to do as he pleased. As she flew through the air, she released a burst of white light out of her sleeve, and it contained a white rope immortal treasure that hurtled toward the giant azure sword. However, as soon as the white rope entered the golden ripples, it was immediately slowed down to the point that it looked as if it had fallen completely still. Xueying had never seen Hanli's mantra treasured axis before, so she was very much taken aback by this turn of events. A cold sneer appeared on Hanli's face as he abruptly expanded the golden ripples outward, and they instantly swelled in diameter by 2-fold to encompass Xueying as well. As soon as she was caught within the golden ripples, Xueying was also rooted to the spot, and the shocked look on her face had also completely stiffened. After trapping Xueying, Hanli pointed a finger at his giant azure sword, and it began to glow radiantly as it crashed down upon Gongshuju. An earth-shattering boom rang out as the giant azure sword was sent flying back, and it was trembling violently, while the spiritual light around it was flickering erratically. A surprised look appeared on Hanli's face upon seeing this, and he hurriedly made a hand seal to stabilize his sword. He then turned to Gong Shuju to discover that an eggshell-like ball of white light had appeared around him. The ball of light was riddled with runes that were quite strange in appearance, and they weren't golden seal text, nor beveled silver text. The runes were arranged in a way that resembled the patterns on the back of a turtle's shell, and it was somehow able to withstand an all-out strike from Han Li's azure bamboo cloud swarm sword. Han Li's eyes narrowed slightly as he made a hand seal, and the giant azure sword immediately lit up once again as it hurtled toward Gong Shuju. At the same time, 2 more identical azure bamboo cloud swarm swords emerged around him, and these 2 swords also swelled drastically in size before crashing down upon Gong Shuju with tremendous power. 3 earth-shattering booms rang out in unison, but all their swords were sent flying back once again, while the ball of light only rippled slightly before falling still again. Han Li's expression darkened slightly upon seeing this.